Government Ethics and Oversight for Monday, May 17th, 2021. Jamie, would you please call the roll?
Chairman DePalma.
Here.
Senator Seveny.
Here.
Senator Coleman is here. Senator Chacon.
Here.
Senator Dela Cruz.
Here.
Senator Oyer.
Here.
Senator Lombardo.
Here.
Majority Whip Goodwin appears to be
Here,
here.
Mr. Chairman.
8 members. There is a quorum.
Thank you, Jamie, and thank you, members of the committee. For those watching on the phone and those who are providing verbal testimony, we will have verbal testimony at the end. We will ask everyone to keep their comments between 3 and 5 minutes. But prior to that, we will be having conversation with the Commissioner of Education, Angélica Infante-Green, the Superintendent of the Providence Public School Department, Harrison Peters, and Nicholas Hemond, President of the Providence Public School Board. Let me start by saying tonight is the first in a series of Senate oversight hearings on the state takeover of the Providence Public School Department. This will certainly not be the last, it's the first. I do want to thank the Providence delegation, including Senators Goodwin, Ruggiero, Bell, Chacon, Golden, Mack, Miller, Quezada, some who are with us tonight, some are members of this committee, for your leadership and concern for PPSD in requesting this oversight hearing. Anyone who knows me knows I'm in search of facts and data. To that end, the goal of tonight's hearing is to gather facts and data on the recent situation with the hiring of the high-level, I'm going to call it the Providence School Department, you'll hear me say PPSD, Providence School Department Administrator. Let me reiterate. The goal of this Senate oversight hearing will be to gather facts and data on what has transpired, what should have transpired, etc. Clearly, past instances will be included in our conversation. It's a part of the conversation of tonight's hearing. Looking at the situation through the lens of students, most importantly, their parents, their grandparents, teachers, residents of Providence, residents of Rhode Island, General Assembly, etc., the following comes to mind. And I'll discuss this again at the very end. The first item that comes to mind is judgment. At multiple levels, was there a lack or repeated lapse in judgment? Next, trust. Decision-making resulting in a loss of trust, potentially. Confidence comes to mind in looking at the various constituent groups I mentioned earlier in the loss in confidence. The word history, pattern of behavior recurring from the past, history. Risk, risk-taking and realized, potentially putting PPSD students at risk. And the last word that comes to mind here is gamble. Rolling the dice that past situation wouldn't reoccur, a gamble with the Providence Public School Department students. With that, the folks on the phone, if you're not speaking, if you can be on mute, it would be appreciated. With that, our endeavor tonight, and I'll say for the third time, and you'll hear me say it again later, is endeavor to ascertain, understand, interpret, evaluate, and question the facts and data surrounding the situation of the Providence Public School Department and the hiring, etc., and the incidents that manifested itself with the high-level administrator. With that said, we're going to have an opening statement from Commissioner Infante-Green, followed by a statement from Superintendent Harrison Peters, and then from there we'll go into some Q&A, which will probably take us some time. I would suspect when we get to that point, Commissioner and Superintendent, that's some of the questions that will be asked. that may be asked of the Commissioner first will probably be joint answers that you'll want to address. So without any further ado, let me turn this over to Commissioner Angélica Infante-Green for an opening statement. Over to you, Commissioner.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Thank you. Good evening, Chairman DePalma, honorable members of the Senate Oversight Committee, and members of the Providence delegation. First and foremost, I want to begin by making it clear that the safety, well-being, and the education of our students is the utmost priority for RIDE, for me as the Commissioner of Education, and above all, for me as a mother. During my time in Rhode Island, I have worked incredibly hard to build trust and strong partnerships to fix a broken education system. I want to sincerely apologize to everyone for the situation that has brought us here today. I'm mortified by this. This by no way reflects the high standards that I expect of every single staff member and educator who works in our Rhode Island schools. As Commissioner, I oversee Providence Public Schools turnaround. I ask that you do not allow this conversation to define the progress that we have made in our capital city. A city where the students perform at single digits and have so for decades. Change is hard, but it's happening. Even during the pandemic, we have met the initial benchmark set by the community for us. We cannot talk about this in a vacuum. We've implemented a uniform, high-quality curriculum for grades K to 8 instead of piecemeal approach throughout the district. We increased professional learning from 1 day to 12 days of learning for our educators to be able to implement the curriculum. We reduced teaching vacancies from 100 to 20. Nearly doubled the percent of teachers of color hired, the required teacher participation in parent-teacher conferences, and we're in the process currently of hiring 36 community specialists from the neighborhoods in our middle school and high schools, bringing counselors to every single elementary school to better support our students' academic and social-emotional needs. We have done a lot of work, but there's still a lot of work ahead of us. Like communities across the country, the pandemic has presented us with real obstacles this past year. And half year this last year. But that has not deterred us from our work and our commitment to make sure that every Providence student has access to high quality education. We will continue to do this important work because our students and families deserve it. I want to make clear that when I was alerted last summer by the media that Dr. Alege's previous action in Florida, I immediately brought Superintendent Harrison Peters in to address this matter. Harrison assured me that he had done a thorough background check. Like many of you, I was dismayed and heartbroken to learn of this current situation. The moment I learned of this incident from Harrison, we contacted Warwick Police. We took action and removed Dr. Alege from our schools and placed him on administrative leave. When we were provided additional details, we asked for his resignation. There were other ways that the district has traditionally approached discipline, but none of them were acceptable or immediate. So we took action. Hiring Dr. Alege was a mistake. Hiring Dr. Alege was a mistake, and one that I can assure you will not happen again. We've introduced a series of additional checks and balances that the superintendent will cover more in detail. Our focus now is on working closely with PPSD community to address the issues ahead and rebuild the trust that we have worked so hard to gain from the community. Not just rebuilding trust that was broken because of the situation, but the promises that have been broken for generations. The systematic inequalities that our students and families have experienced at the hands of adults for decades. We cannot forget that. And I am committed as much as I have been and always will be to this work. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. I'd now like to turn it over to Superintendent Harrison Peters for some opening statement. Over to you, Superintendent. Superintendent, I believe you're muted right now.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. Go
Can you hear me
ahead.
now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Thank you so much. Chairman DePalma, Majority Whip Goodwin, honorable committee members, members of the Providence delegation. Thank you for your continued attention to and concern for Providence Public Schools and our students. Today, I'm here to talk about the hiring of Dr. Olayinka Alege, an administrator for the Providence Public Schools District. Last year, I ultimately made the decision to hire Dr. Alege. I did so after an extensive multi-round interview process. I did so after working with him for more than 3 years in Florida, during which this time his work ethic and success in transforming struggling schools impressed leadership throughout the district. I thought I knew him. You should know that all the hires for Providence Public Schools are required to pass through background and reference check. And Dr. Alege was no exception. He passed with no issues. However, in conducting a Google search, I reviewed news coverage from 2009 with which I know you're familiar about. And I questioned Dr. Alege about it directly. This was the first time I was made aware of this incident. It had never been brought to my attention during the entire time we were colleagues in Hillsborough County. When Dr. Alege told me that he had meant no harm and that in hindsight, he understood that his behavior was inappropriate and would never be repeated, I made a decision to believe him. A decision I felt was supported by the facts. The facts that there were no charges filed against him in association with this incident. There were no parent complaints around this incident. The HR team that investigated this incident endorsed his 2 subsequent promotions, and it happened nearly 11 years ago, since he's had no issues. But I was wrong. When the Ward police contacted me in late April to alert me that they were investigating Dr. Alege for an alleged assault, I immediately put him on leave. When I learned more details of these allegations, which seemed to be supported by video evidence, it became clear to me that he was not someone that should continue to work at Providence Public Schools. The commissioner and I requested his resignation, and he complied. I believe in the importance of accountability. That's something that was drilled to me during my time serving in the United States Navy. And it's a lesson that I've brought to every job that I've held. No one is above accountability, and that includes me. My hiring of Dr. Alege as a network superintendent for Providence Public Schools was an error in judgment. I want to sincerely apologize for the pain and the worry this incident caused students, families, and the educators of PPSD. I am fully committed to doing whatever it takes to support our community during this time. And that starts with taking action. Dr. Alege's responsibilities did not involve direct interaction with students. And we have no evidence at this time to suggest he was involved in any inappropriate behaviors in our school. That said, out of abundance of caution, we will be bringing in an outside firm to conduct a complete audit of his 10 months of employment in the Providence Public School District. Moving forward, we pledge to strengthen our hiring practices by engaging community members in the interview process and the vetting process for senior level positions, and by contracting with a firm to conduct a deeper background research consisting of a thorough review of all candidate information, including from social media and press. We also recognize the need to seek outside expertise to improve in this area, and plan to convene a blue ribbon panel of local human resources and educational experts, as well as members of the community, to submit recommendations to the district. I believe in our team's ability to execute on these recommendations and improve hiring, because we've already done it for other district processes. Over the last year, after acting on the recommendations of the community, we reformed some of the main processes called out as obstacles to progress in the Johns Hopkins report, including budgeting and procurement. There is no question that PPSD is a different district today than it was a year ago. We were one of a few large urban districts in the country to safely reopen in person for learning during COVID-19. We implemented a high quality, socially responsive curriculum for K-8 students, and we have a unified curriculum for grades 9 through 12 starting this fall. We started the redesign process of our high schools, invested in professional development to support our incredible educators. We implemented a rapid response customer service tool for families. This significantly increased parent satisfaction with the district, drastically reduced teacher vacancies at the start of last school year, and nearly doubled the percentage of teachers of color that we've hired in the district. We've also included counselors at the elementary level. Social emotional learning is a top priority. The community specialists at the secondary level will provide mentorship and family outreach. I can continue to list the metrics of progress that we've made so far, but I won't. The reality is change can't happen without trust. And after the events of this week, we have work to do to rebuild the trust with our community so that we can continue the great changes that our students deserve. And I know that. I am fully committed to doing this work, that I am just as committed to transforming this school district as I was the first day that I stepped foot into this incredible city. Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent, for the opening statement.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
I'm not interrupting any of the proceedings, but I'm getting several text messages that many people are unable to hear us, and that the buffering is that they can't really participate. They're having a hard time. And I know other senators have texted me as well, saying that they're hearing from their constituents as well. Is there anything we can do?
We will check with the Capitol TV who's here. In fact, several folks are here from Capitol TV. We'll work to see if we can get the audio corrected. So.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Whip, can you hear me okay? Is that?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yes, I can.
So maybe the folks that were coming in. So I ask folks, when you are speaking, try and be as close to the microphone as you can. And unlike me, speak slowly. Don't speak fast like I do. I will try and speak slowly. So thanks, Whip, for bringing it up, and they're checking on it now. So I'm going to open this up to some questions, and I think it's the case of Commissioner and Superintendent. It might be a combination of who answers it, but I'll address the question to one person first, and then you can figure out between the two. Both answer it, some similar questions, and then I'll go through a few, then we're going to go around the committee that's on the line with us. So, Commissioner, the first question for you is, with the takeover of Providence Public School, what role does RIDE and the Commissioner play in the typical hiring process for high-level administrators? That's for you, Commissioner Infante-Green.
Yes, sorry. Can you hear me?
Now we can, yes.
Okay. So normally we get brought in the list of candidates and we go over the list. So that's the role that we play in the hiring of high-level candidates.
Commissioner, just for getting back to the Whip's question earlier, they're having a similar issue in another committee hearing as well, so they're working to try and correct the buffering. So, Commissioner, specifically with regards to the particular hire here, what role did you play in the hiring?
We met Dr. Alege in a conversation that we normally have with all candidates, but that was it.
Okay, so it's not part of the interview process?
No, I'm not part of the process. The district brings me the names of the candidates and we discuss what their roles will be.
Does anyone else from RIDE participate in the, not saying at the teacher level, but the high-level administrator? I consider, if I recall correctly, the individual was a network superintendent.
Yes. No, RIDE does not traditionally. We do meet the candidates, we have a conversation with them, but we do not participate.
Okay. So folks, what I'm hearing is WebEx is working well, but there's an issue on the Capital TV side. What I'd like to be able to do is, it's exactly 6 o'clock now. If you can please stand by. Let's give them 5 minutes and see, to make certain so that the public who's trying to participate can do so. So if we can stand by, please, for 5 minutes, and maybe it'll be fixed by then. I'll try and give you an update as we get closer to, on the minute, what we're doing. So stand by. We're having is on the Capital TV network side of things, so that's what they're looking at right now. We'll let you know. Thank you, folks. We are now live on Capital TV while they work to restore or get the online streaming back online. So if the folks can come back online that wish to come online, it'd be appreciated. Also, an update for those watching and those, we have Whip Mary Ellen Goodwin, Senator Majority Whip, is with us. We have Senator Hannah Gallo, President Pro Tem. We have Senator Sam Bell, Senator Tiara Mack, and Senator Joshua Miller have also joined us, or were with us. They may not be with us any longer, but they may be back. So Commissioner, Commissioner, just a follow-up question for you, and then we'll go to the superintendent, and then we're going to go around to some of the committee members. So Commissioner, going back to, if I thought I heard you correctly, you were involved, but you don't have final authority or responsibility for hiring the high-level administrators. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So given the state has taken over PPSD, shouldn't you have final authority?
Well, I'm overseeing the district, but the day-to-day is done by the superintendent. So the current process is that they bring the final candidates, we get to meet them, but we're not part of the hiring process.
Okay, I'm not going to continue down the path, but given that the state has taken over, if we're just in the role of hearing what's going on, listening.
You're correct, but moving forward, that is what is going to happen. I will be involved in the hiring, and no senior level hiring will take place without RIDE being involved.
Okay. Let me go to the superintendent before we then go around to some of the committee members. So, the Superintendent Peters, you talked about the hiring process for high-level administrators. Can you talk a little bit more about the vetting process? Because I saw what you had presented. I heard what you said with regards to part of the vetting process. With regards to the consultant review, can you speak a little bit more about what the consultant actually did or the third party actually did in facilitating the hiring?
Thank you so much. Yes, so Dr. Legay was highly qualified for this position. It was a team-based hiring, and he was the consensus choice of the team. So it came to me as a recommendation from the team. I worked with them for nearly 4 years in Hillsborough County and was never aware of this incident. We brought a consultant in who understood the role of the principal supervisor and who leads this type of work around the country. This person created an objective process to screen and hire candidates because we wanted to make sure that we were being objective in our hiring processes.
Thank you, Superintendent. Can you tell the committee who that consultant was? And I assume we paid the consultant for their work.
The consultant's name was Steve Gearing.
Steve which?
Gearing.
He's a independent contractor, or does he work for an organization?
Yes, independent contractor.
Thank you. And with regards to, last question, part of this I had, then we'll move over to the committee. With regards to, I saw in what you had sent and what you had said with regards to checking references. So we've all been involved with hiring and providing or looking for a job and providing references. Almost anybody who provides a reference is going to provide someone who's going to give them a positive reference, right? So we'll put that as a, we'll couch that question. What had transpired in the past of which you were aware, did you reach out to those folks from which you were aware from as part of the hiring process, as part of the reference check? Or did you just go based on the references provided by, in the resume or upon request?
So this event, this incident that happened with Dr. Legay happened over 11 years ago. I worked with Dr. Legay for nearly 4 years. When he transitioned to the district, I called 2 of his previous supervisors and a colleague that he worked with.
Okay, thank you. Superintendent, all due respect, it happened over 10 years ago and it happened again. So whether it happened 10 years or 11 years ago and it happened again, the situation manifested itself there. I'd like to go over to some of the committee folks. Whip Goodwin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank you, members of the committee. And thank you, Mr. Chairman, for putting together this very necessary, in my opinion, urgent oversight. And thank you to my Providence colleagues who are all joined here. Throughout the course of the last several days since we became aware of this, I have received numerous calls and emails from parents that are very, very concerned. In my estimation, and that leopards don't change their spots, so to speak. Yes, this incident happened down in Florida maybe 11 years ago. I'm just learning that now. But of course, alleged child predators never change their spot. They're never cured. And so thus, this administrator comes from Florida, and then that we know of, assaults a young boy in Warwick. And I'm very saddened by that, and I'm sad for him and for the family. And with that being said, this oversight of how we came to this point is so very, very essential. This is not a witch hunt. We're not out to get him. We want answers. I can tell you that from all sincerity. So I just wanted to follow up. Oh, I could ask so many questions, but I know time is limited and we're limited to one. A little bit of a follow-up, Superintendent. This would be, I think, directed to you. So back to the hiring of Dr. Legay. Was there, to put it in simple terms, like a hiring committee? Okay, so there was a hiring committee. You're nodding your head, okay. Did this hiring committee pick Dr. Allegri? Or did they choose someone else?
Thank you so much. We had an extensive 6-round process to select the network superintendent position. It was inclusive of a team that included members from my team in central office. It also was inclusive of 3 principals who were going to be directly working with the network superintendent, because I wanted to make sure that when this person was hired, that it's someone the principals felt that they could work with. So the consensus candidate, majority candidate, was Dr. Allegri. That was the recommendation from the principal and my central office team throughout the 6-tier process.
Okay, so the people you speak of, was the hiring committee? Or no, these are another group of people?
No, they were part of the hiring committee.
Part of. So you had the majority that went ahead and voted, or however you operate, to support Dr. Allegri for this position.
Yes, ma'am. Each round had a score and also had feedback. So based on their feedback and their score, Dr. Allegri was the consensus candidate.
Okay, but just so we're clear, just as I'm winding down, Superintendent, you knew of these allegations when you were in Florida. Is that correct? Because you had a personal relationship with Dr. Allegri? No? No,
ma'am. Dr. Allegri, when this incident was reported in Florida, I was working in another district. So
you did not know of this?
I had no idea. And Dr. Allegri was a colleague of mine. There was no personal relationship. And I was not aware of this issue when I was in Hillsborough County. As I said, shared with the team earlier, that the incident was investigated by the HR team. There was no discipline. There was no parent complaints. There were no charges filed. And in that same district, he was promoted twice to district positions. So when I got there, he had already been promoted twice and had 10 years of strong track record.
Okay, so you only learned of this after you were already stationed here in Providence as our superintendent, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And then when you learned of this, because it's hard to believe, because it was so well reported, the teachers were the ones to first, bring this to the attention to the public. And then thankfully the news media reported this. So it became, the Rhode Islanders became aware of the fact that he had this allegation with these 5 boys down in Florida at some point in time. I'm wondering, you didn't tell the superintendent, you didn't tell our commissioner, Infante-Green, or the school board, because it seems like none of them had any knowledge. At what point in time did those folks become aware of the allegations down in Florida? Because even though he, apologized or called it a mistake, I think it's quite serious. It's really weird.
I don't know when the folks came aware. I questioned Dr. Allegri there's a part of the process where each candidate has a one-on-one conversation with me. And I asked him to unpack that article. And Dr. Allegri said that it was reported as a form of discipline, just misguided discipline. So I asked him to walk me through the results. And Dr. Allegri shared that there was no discipline. There was no police report. There was no arrest. There were no parent complaints. I also asked the same question with the references that I called.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't want to take up any more time, and I do have a lot more questions, but I understand I'm respectful of this process and all the time you've given. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Superintendent.
Thank you, Madam Whip. Much appreciated. Just going back before we go to the next committee member, Superintendent, just a follow-up question on that. Did you sit on the interview committee?
Yes, I was a non-voting. I did not take notes. I observed the process. I was a process observer.
Okay. With regards to the situation that the whip that we're talking about in Florida, did you make the committee aware of that situation? It's a yes or no.
No, I did not.
Okay. Any reason?
I'm not sure I knew at that time.
So that means that you would have, he's been here since, the individual's been here just about a year or so, I think April or May of last year, he was brought on board. So you didn't find out until sometime between May, when he was tired, and after that? But you said you talked to him about the situation, so you had to know ahead of time.
Yeah, I was responding to the question of did I share with the committee?
Correct.
I don't have the exact dates, but I did not share with the committee. A short time after that, doing a Google search is when we found out.
After it was already decided, or I'm losing track. I apologize. I'm trying to, as an engineer, I'm trying to get what do I know, what I don't know, what do I need to know, what do I want to know, and you had a conversation with the individual. You knew about it then because you said you asked him about it then. That was before he was selected. Was he the finalist at that point in time?
I didn't hear that last part. I apologize.
Was the individual a finalist when you asked him? Was he the person that it was narrowed down to it when you asked him the question about his past? Because you knew about his past. You had just said to the majority whip, I knew about his past. I asked him about his past, and he said there was nothing official, nothing reported, no complaint, whatever, at the police, from a police perspective. But when did you talk to him to just discuss the situation from 10, 11 years ago? Was after he was already hired, when he was the #1 candidate, or where?
No, this was before he was hired.
But the committee didn't know about it.
Right. There was a 6-step process.
Yes, okay.
That spanned over multiple weeks, maybe even a little bit more than a month. During that process, I had a conversation with Dr. Legge about it.
What? I appreciate that. I don't want to. When did you? But the committee was never informed. The interview committee that was involved over them. If you had different parts, and I've been involved, none of the committee members were ever informed of the situation.
Correct.
Thank you. Okay. Senator Coleman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to the superintendent and the commissioner for being here tonight. So I have 2 questions, if the chairman will permit. The first, I want to preface this with a comment, which is that I find it pretty disturbing that the way that the news articles, I did some Googling myself, misrepresented what was going on, right? So non-consensual touching of a child in any form by a school official is a red flag for abusive behavior, and it's also a grooming behavior, right? And so it very much concerns me that when we identify grooming behaviors that either it doesn't get up and down communicated through the committee, et cetera. And so the related question there is that were there additional personnel records or anything like that that was shared and reviewed from Dr. Legge's previous employment? Did they contain reports of inappropriate and non-consensual behavior either towards the students or others? So that's the first question. And if I can tack the second one on, I heard you say, Superintendent, a few minutes ago that in Dr. Legge's current role, he does not have direct contact with students. So was that an intentional design of his role because of these concerns, or was that coincidental?
Thank you so much. So I have no records from the previous district to indicate what you just shared or asked about a discipline history. The sheer nature of the role is a principal supervisor, so he works directly with assistant principals, teacher leaders, and principals. So his day-to-day, the job is designed for him to work with adults. So it was not designed because of his history. That's the nature of a principal supervisor, the role that he was in.
Thank you. Thank you, Superintendent. Commissioner, if I can go back and just follow up on the question from the superintendent to yourself, Commissioner Infante-Green. When did you find out about this? Before he was hired or after he was hired?
After he was hired.
Thank you. Okay. Senator Dela Cruz.
Sorry about that, I was muted. Before I ask my question, I may have missed it, but I want to double check. Mr. Chairman, are the commissioner and superintendent and any other individuals testifying about this this matter under oath right now?
They are not tonight.
Okay. There are two discrepancies here. I'm trying to figure out what the correct statement was, and I thought that I heard Commissioner of Education Angélica Infante-Green state that Peters told her the situation, but I also want to point out that that Dr. Peters, they came from the same school district as Dr. Alege, and he didn't know because it predated him. But on WPRI, it was acknowledged by him that he knew about this troubling and really despicable history with kids. So I'd like to know if that is true.
Just to clarify, what I made reference to is when he informed me of the Warwick incident. I did not know about the Florida incident.
Thank you, Commissioner. Yes, thank you. Sorry, go ahead, Senator Dela Cruz. I interrupted. I apologize.
No, not at all, Senator. So I'm looking at the WPRI article, and it says here that Dr. Peters knew about this troubling past. I'm reading here off of my notes. So there's a lot of back and forth here in the committee. They did know, they didn't know, Dr. Peters knew, he didn't know. So news reports are saying that he did. I want to know with absolute certainty right here now, did Dr. Peters know about this behavior, these grooming, non-consensual touching behaviors?
Thank you so much. So I had knowledge of this while I worked in Hillsborough County. I knew about this before we hired him. But while I worked with the district in Hillsborough County, I had no knowledge of this.
Thank you. So, Superintendent, following back on that, we hired a firm to facilitate the hiring and background checks and whatever else they did. I'm not going to ask you what we paid them, because I assume the state, obviously, the city's paying that bill or the state's paying that bill. But given that, if it wasn't known, if that wasn't uncovered, or known, I don't want to say uncovered, if that information wasn't made available as part of that process, wouldn't you say that if you didn't find out until after the fact, wouldn't we say the process is flawed? If, as you indicated, and as all of us did, and as many searches I did over the weekend, whether it was Google, Bing, you name it, the number of incidences, number of things that come up, including other things in Hillsborough County, Florida, or whatever, that the gravity, as Senate Majority Whip Mary Ellen Goodwin mentioned, the gravity of the situation. Any of us with children, or even if we don't have children, any of us with grandchildren, or if we don't have grandchildren, look at this and would find it extremely troubling that our family members, God forbid our children, I'll say even worse, our grandchildren might be in that situation. So, Senator Oyer, then Senator Gallo. I apologize, Senator Gallo. Senator Oyer.
Thank you. I have two questions. One is for the commissioner. Commissioner, I just want to make sure that I'm understanding the timeline too on when you found out a comparison. So it's my understanding based on your testimony that you did not find out until after he had been hired. How long before this was made public did you find out?
I'm sorry, the first question was, did I know? I knew after he was hired. I did not know about the Florida incident. And now with Warwick, I found out the superintendent informed me of what happened in Warwick the day he found out.
No, my question is, when did you find out? So the superintendent has testified that he did know before the final hire was made. But my question for you is, did you find out about the Florida incident before it was publicly reported in the news? And if so, when?
No, I found out through the news.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner. As far as I think this is a statement more than it's a question, that I really take exception to both of the opening statements, both trying to, on one hand, want to sever this incident and this conversation from the state takeover of the schools, while then both pivoting into kind of promoting the work that they have been doing in the Providence schools. I take exception to that because the Providence School District educates some of our most vulnerable students. And I think Senator Coleman is right in identifying this as grooming behavior. And I'm extremely, extremely troubled that it has been so difficult to get a timeline as to when this knowledge of the Florida incident, when the superintendent had that knowledge. And I also just want to be very clear that when somebody is exhibiting grooming behavior, you know, I'm somebody who believes in second chances. I'm somebody who believes in reform. But when somebody is approached and somebody is asked about their experience and that the superintendent indicated that the doctor just kind of denied this was an issue and said that it was misguided discipline. I just take exception with the judgment that then followed to hire this individual while knowing that they were not taking ownership, that they were not being treated. And you know, just quite frankly, people who are inappropriately touching students have no place in our school systems. And, you know, if that's judgment, if that's the judgment that we're seeing, there needs to be a lot more oversight and a lot more assessment of the policies and procedures that are implemented moving forward. So that's just what I want to say.
Thank you, Senator Royer. Much appreciated. Senator Gallo?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, committee meetings. I concur with Senator Oyer on that last point that she made. The recent events and subsequent controversies surrounding the actions in the hiring of Dr. Alleghi have brought the leadership and the decision-making of Superintendent Harris Peterson rightfully into question. In addition to Dr. Alleghi's appointment, another point of contention was the elimination of the entire English Language Arts Department at the Juanita Sanchez Education Complex. To eliminate the whole complete English Language Department is just, I can't even imagine. And then this decision has been sanctioned and defended publicly during the recent Providence School Board meeting by the superintendent. I think the following points need to be considered as, like Dr. Oyer, promoting you, as Dawn Oyer was saying, you have to question the judgment that's going on here. 58% of JSCC students would be enrolled in mainstream English classes. Only 42% of those JSCC students are ESL students. Every high school in Rhode Island has mainstream English classes. The point is further magnified by the fact that the students have had a year and a half of interrupted education resulting from the pandemic. The teachers that were eliminated are experienced, high qualified, and have been ranked highly effective by the state educator evaluation system. By contrast, the teachers teaching the hybrid ESL English classes are only emergency certified. And I know that the commissioner was bragging about hiring all of these other teachers. However, they're emergency certified. They have not had any kind of rigorous training. And I don't think we need to be diluting the curriculum for our ESL students. I think we should expect more, and it should be rigorous for them, and we should be working harder than ever to make sure that these students are getting what they need. So not only was, in my part, whether you're from Florida or not, bad judgment, but it continues with this curriculum and other things that are happening in the school. So my question to Dr. Harrison Peters, it would be, how do you justify putting emergency certified teachers and letting the other teachers be eliminated? And if that wasn't your decision, then the commissioner maybe should answer it.
Thank you so much, Senator Gallo. I really appreciate the question. I want to be really clear that we didn't eliminate anything. We designed learning around the needs of students, and the needs of students are required teachers to have ESL certification, their English certifications. The DOJ, we're under a DOJ, Department of Justice court order on how we've systematically years underserve our multilingual students. So we're just stepping into the expectations and the requirements for certification. So no, we did not go and eliminate an entire department, but we have to look at the needs of students and design our learning and our programming around those needs. So students' needs dictate the decisions that we've made.
I'm not going to continue it because, I mean, this is just calling in your judgment, and we haven't really received the answers that we were looking for as far as when you knew and what you didn't. So I feel that hiding under the Department of Justice for teaching ESL students, it's my understanding with dual language that those students should be, that they can rise, that we don't have to go down to having uncertified teachers. I think that they will rise to the occasion, and the curriculum needs to be rigorous. But I'll let it go with that and let other people, I know there's many people that want to speak, and I want to thank everyone for accommodating me because as everybody knows, is the way Providence goes, the rest of the state goes. And I think it's important that we do everything that we can so that these students get the most that they can get. So thank you.
Thank you, President Pro Tem Gallo. Much appreciated. Senator Chacon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let's see, how can I put this? Dr. Peters, I believe you previously testified a few minutes ago that prior to hiring, you were made aware of the problem that Dr. Agayi had. Is that correct?
Correct.
At that time that you knew, did you notify the rest of your committee of the problem?
No.
Well, this is what I find highly irregular. You knew of a problem. You must have a close relationship with the person, and yet the committee and the consultant you hired, you never let them know that there was a potential problem in his previous background. That's correct?
There's no close relationship with me and Dr. Alege. And I characterize the conversation that I had with Dr. Alege. I hear you loud and what I get from Dr. Alege and the references that this was misguided discipline, that there were no arrests, no charges, no discipline. He went on to have 10 years of successful work history in that district where he was also promoted 2 times. And let me be very clear. I don't want to lose sight on, I own this. And I am sick, I am frustrated, I am hurting. I put my trust in someone and my trust was betrayed. So I get the frustrations of you all. But we did have a strong conversation, provided clarity for Dr. Alege. I called the references, and again, based on the information that I received, I felt that we made the right decision. Clearly, I was wrong.
Just one follow-up question.
Absolutely.
Knowing that there was some irregular background that he had, and he said there was no discipline, could it be that no one came forward to actually press the issue, and subsequent to that, in the other areas that he did work, is it possible that it happened again with nobody reporting it?
I can't speak to that. I don't know.
Okay, thank you.
I'm going to go to Senator 70, then Senator Mack. Senator 70.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. So, I mean, I'm trying to follow this as well. I mean, I think one of the fundamental things in a circumstance like this you need to know is who knew what, when, and I'm still unclear on this. So let me make an assertion based on what I've heard. Dr. Peters, you're the only one who was aware of the history of this gentleman up until the time that all this news came out about the Warwick thing in the local papers here. Is that a correct statement?
I can't say that. I don't know.
Well,
I'm sorry. I want to make sure did you say the Warwick situation?
Well, yeah. I mean, the reason we're here is from what we're reading about over the past week in what this gent did with that kid in Warwick. And this was news to everyone except you, that there was a previous history related to this kind of behavior. Is that true?
Could you repeat the question? I don't think I'm following.
Okay. Up until last week, you were the only one in the state of Rhode Island that was aware that this gentleman had previous history with similar sorts of behaviors.
No, sir. No, sir. It was widespread knowledge by last week or by the incident in Warwick.
Well, I understand that. I mean, we all know now, but prior to what happened last week, what I heard was the commissioner had no idea. The person you hired to vet this gentleman during the hiring practice, you didn't tell him either, so he had no idea. And the other members of your hiring committee had no idea because you didn't tell them either.
I like to offer just a couple pieces of clarification.
First, is that, am I getting this right or not?
I don't think so. We're talking last summer. I'm happy to walk you through if it's helpful. I'm happy to walk the team through, the family through the timeline.
Go ahead, Superintendent.
So we had a 6-step process that we used for the hiring of our network superintendents. And it started, the first step, March through May 2020. We had round one, which was posting of the role, collecting resumes, looking at the resumes, screening resumes, and selecting an initial group of candidates. I think we had maybe 32 applications. Step two was an initial phone screen, where we talked to the candidates for about 30 minutes to get a sense of their theory of action, the work that they've done, their belief system. That happened during April 2020. Step three, there was a 90-minute video interview with the performance task, where they would come in, they were given a pre-assignment, it was aligned to the work that we're gonna do in Providence around principal supervisor, and they had to come do a presentation of performance task. That happened in April and May 2020, the end of April through the beginning of May 2020. Then the step four was the one-on-one with the superintendent, where that group of the folks who had moved on to the next round would have a one-on-one conversation with me. Step five, there was an observation, coaching, and professional development session with principals. So we brought in my senior advisor, my chief of staff, a group of principals. Those interviews took place on May 8th. Step six, and the final piece was the reference check and the offer letter. The members of the hiring committee, district and school leader staff rated each candidate based on their identified competencies and their roles. They also identified a consensus choice, and the recommendation was Dr. Legge. I called three references. There's a federal background check that was done. When those references and background checks were completed, there were no issues. Hiring paperwork was completed, and we finalized the contract mid to end May.
Okay, well, thanks for all that. But I guess during this six-step process last year, at no time did you inform either the commissioner, nor the hiring committee, nor the consultant that you were aware that this person had some prior history with questionable behavior from his experience down in Florida. Is that right?
That is correct.
That's what I was looking for. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Mack.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I mean, this is really hard to unpack, and I think some of the things that you have said so far is that your trust was broken by the leap of faith you took to hire Dr. Legge, but especially in light of our crumbling schools and families who have watched a very public takeover, watching the trust of parents, the trust of students, and the trust in a school takeover essentially be diminished. Families and our students have lost all faith in this, and it's not just a statement of the process, but also how many blind spots did you miss in this hiring process, and how many other blind spots are you missing in the takeover of our schools? How many other red flags are we missing when we're thinking about how we're going to improve the education of our young people, the social emotional welfare of our young people, when we can't even get hiring for one of the highest levels of this turnaround correct? And I think there's now going to be, there has been a call for the takeover of our Providence schools to end. And so what do you say to the parents who have lost the trust in this process, that they can move forward with any ounce of trust that there aren't other red flags that you and others in leadership are missing when it comes to putting our students' futures back on the right track and putting our families' trust back in a system that for decades has let them down?
Senator Mack, thank you so much. We know that we've got to continue to strengthen and rebuild trust. And one of the most difficult pieces is to have this conversation about what I shared, this gentleman betraying our trust. But also, it's hard to also take out of context just the extraordinary gains that we've had this year. We are a very different school district. We have seen tons of success. That being said, we still have a long way to go. We've also hired a number of executive leaders. Dr. Legge isn't the only one. The Johns Hopkins report cited that our school district was broken, and we needed to press the reset button from the top all the way through, and we've done that. I'm very open, and again, disappointed and hurt. We didn't get it right with Dr. Legge. So I tell our parents we are going to get it right. We fixed it. That's why I called for his immediate resignation. Where we go from here, we continue to focus on the turnaround, the needs of kids, and building trust with our community.
And one other question for you. There have been several studies that young people in schools do significantly better when there are teachers that are homegrown from their communities, members of their communities who then move through the school systems, know their community deeply because they are oftentimes the uncles, the aunts, the cousins, and the people that these communities looked up to. Seeing some of the concerning news for someone who is not from our community, what is this office going to do to make sure that we're not only cultivating quality talent that isn't blind in the hiring process, but also cultivating local talent to make sure that our communities are understood by the very people who are here for the turnaround?
Perfect question. One of the things that I heard from students and families when I first got here, that many of our educators don't live in the city, and students felt like they didn't identify them. So we've been on a distant all-out blitz on putting several things in place to ensure that we are standing and respecting local talent. The first thing we've done, we've got a $10 million grant from the federal government to develop a pipeline from teacher all the way to principal. We're looking at our teacher assistants, which is a very diverse core of employees, to help them get their teaching certification so they can in turn return to the school and support classrooms. The third thing that we've done, you may have heard, is we're hiring 36 community liaisons. These community specialist positions are folks directly from our community. We heard loud and clear over the past year, parents and community want to be part of the process. So we've created, you probably remember last year, I cut about $3.5 million out of central office to try to set the conditions so that we can build a school district for the future. In building that school district for the future, we prioritize guidance counselors at the elementary level. If you notice, we don't have counselors at the elementary level. Our students need social emotional support and all the help that they can get. The community specialists are directly from the community. They know our children. We're going to hire them. They're going to be trained in restorative practices, de-escalation strategies, social emotional framework. So we are working really hard to stand up opportunities, A, to build a school district that reflects the students that we serve, but B, ensure that we're building a school district that's uniquely built for the needs of our children.
Thank you. One final question. I appreciate all of those steps that have gone to fixing some of the root causes of our lack of access to quality of education for young people in Providence. But as someone who was a certified math teacher in Massachusetts public schools, I could not teach in Providence when I wanted to. I lived here, this was my community, and because I was certified in secondary math education in Massachusetts, I could not have 100% reciprocity. There are many teachers who want to teach in our schools, and it is so much easier to drive 15 minutes to Attleboro, 30 minutes to New Bedford or Fall River, where one, the salaries are higher, and two, there are more there are better opportunities for teachers, and and the education system is far much more under control than it is here. What are we doing to attract high quality talent locally in our schools, and also not cutting corners when we attract more and more teachers into our schools for our young people?
Can I answer the first half, the certification? You're 100% correct. We changed that so that you can have reciprocity with, I think it's almost 11 states.
And that's not true reciprocity. That reciprocity is only if there is a like certification in the state. So for example, a Massachusetts ESL teacher could not teach ESL in Rhode Island because in Massachusetts it's a standalone certification, whereas in Rhode Island it is an add-on certification.
Commissioner, if we can just wrap up the question, please. I respect the question of Senator Mack. I know there are other questions on the topic, so Senator, I apologize, but to try and keep us on the, because we have a whole list of folks to testify after that. So Commissioner, if you can just quickly respond, and maybe you can follow up, Commissioner can follow up with Senator Mack directly. That'd be good, if that's okay,
Sure.
Senator Mack?
Sure, I will follow up with the answer, absolutely.
Senator Mack, is that okay? Okay. Just before we go to Senator Bell, so Superintendent, I want to go back to a question you made earlier, and it's great having laptops to be able to search and do things at the same time as we're hearing testimony, whatever. So I want to go back to Mr. Gehring, and just did a search on, we put two things together, Gehring and Peters, and one of the first things that comes up is there's an organization called Men of Color in Educational Leadership, and the two founders are, in fact, maybe there's more than two. Well, I guess no, there's two, what it shows here anyway. If this website is up to date, I'm not certain it is, Superintendent. But yourself, Superintendent Peters, and Mr. Gehring, maybe you said independent, maybe not, independent consultant, maybe that, I'm juxtaposing those two together. Did you make Mr. Gehring aware of the individual's past? Superintendent Peters?
So Mr. Gehring, so his ask was to build a process to screen candidates and to build out the performance task. He is not responsible, nor did we ask him to do any type of background checks for the process. He has done principal supervisor work around the country. He's probably one of the leading experts in the country around this. So we asked him to build out the process. What would an objective process look like to screen candidates, to take them through a performance task, identify their skill set? So he is not on the HR part of the house. He is on the tactical leadership development side of the house.
So Commissioner, Secretary, well,
so he would not have been part of that conversation.
Superintendent, so I appreciate the answer, but the process, Mr. Gehring defined the process for PPSD, correct?
No.
The screening process.
He provided part of the steps that we told the process, the steps that we wanted, and he designed those steps that go in there. So he was only the architect of what we've asked him to design.
Okay. So I guess very basic, I'm going to go back to my facts and data perspective. The process he articulated for you, not to reuse a copyright term, didn't include a Google search in there. Because if it did, the entire committee would have had the information, and you wouldn't have had to worry about the interview committee or evaluation committee or any of those as part of that 6-step process having to get the information from you only. So that screening that he set up, I'll just say obviously, did not have a Google search that said, let's go see what the internet says about all the candidates. Not just him, all the candidates. Because if it did, then we would have missed this or it was held.
Yeah, that's not what he was asked or tasked to do. He was tasked to do a performance screening. Does this person have the skill set, the experience, the knowledge to coach, support, and develop a principal? And how can you build out a performance task that they can show in an interview if they have capacity? His job was not to touch anything close to screening candidates with regard to their history or their arrest records or anything. It was purely on the leadership side of the house. Does this person have the acumen and the ability to support, develop, and coach principals?
Okay. Just before we get to Senator Bell, and I don't want to belabor it any longer. So, Commissioner, what does the HR department do in PPSD if they didn't do a Google search on him or all the candidates? We missed this. We categorically missed this somewhere.
I think the superintendent can talk about the HR process. The HR process is at the district level.
That's what I'm saying. Sorry, Commissioner, I meant superintendent. Sorry.
Okay.
I'm juxtaposing those things. I apologize. So, Superintendent, with regards to the HR process, the HR process did not include let's come away from Google, whether it's Bing, pick Yahoo, pick whatever your favorite search engine out there is. An internet search was not accomplished as part of this, correct?
I can't speak to the HR, an internet search by HR. What I can speak to is they're responsible for the background, the FBI fingerprinting and background check in the national database.
Okay, then if they didn't do that, the basic of searching background information that comes from the internet, right, wrong, or indifferent, I'm not going to say everything you read you believe. Categorically, as an engineer, you need to understand and appreciate the facts and the data there. But the process didn't include that because the entire committee would have been made aware of it, and they wouldn't have had to rely on yourself to not tell them. So, okay. Senator Bell. Then we'll go to Senator Chacon. Sorry, Senator Bell.
No, thank you so much, Mr. Chairman, and I agree with the comments you've raised as well as the other committee members. So the question I want to ask is about a pattern of cases in which, or another incident in which concerns about child abuse were dismissed when RIDE made a very important, high-level, prominent decision. And, you know, it's my feeling, I think with the Alege incident, I and many, many other people spoke out against the decision at the time. It seemed pretty clear-cut to me at the time. I don't understand why it wasn't to RIDE. The question I want to ask is about a different incident. You are aware, and this is for the Commissioner, you're aware, I'm sure, of the scandal roiling the Achievement First charter chain about the institutionalized cover-up of a Connecticut principal physically assaulting a student. Yes?
About a Connecticut principal assaulting a student?
Yes.
No, I'm not aware of that.
You are not aware of this?
No.
I find that difficult to believe. It is one of the most prominent stories in education recently. It has been roiling the Achievement First charter chain. I find it similarly difficult to believe because in September, or in the fall, I believe, when this decision was being made at a certain point, and I can't swear to the exact month, and I should be clear about that. I had raised concerns about Achievement First before the decision was made to have an expansion, and you had one of your staff members reach out to listen to my concerns. And what I discussed was the concerns about this incident, which I had read about in Chalkbeat. And the impression I was given was that you were asking, you had your staff member ask me about my concerns so that they would be relayed back to you. So that's why I find it somewhat difficult to believe that you were not made aware of this. The other question I have is whether now that you are made aware of this, and you know, it was a very big thing. These schools in Connecticut were placed under probation by the Connecticut Board of Education under now Secretary of Education Cardona when he was in Connecticut. It's a very big deal. I'm wondering if you would be willing to take a couple of steps to ensure that abuse issues do not perpetuate in the Rhode Island Achievement First schools. One of those is to look and investigate the issue and institute policies to make sure that all abuse claims will be addressed and that we will ensure and find a way to ensure that we will not see the same institutionalized cover-up where, in the Connecticut incident, the teacher was not even disciplined until the video was leaked to the local media. As part of that, I am hoping you would be willing to agree tonight to investigate the allegations of choking and grabbing of collar placed on the Google reviews for achievement first, concerns I have raised with RIDE, and I'm hoping you will be willing to investigate those concerns and make sure that the incidents described by student or someone representing themselves online as a student at this school did not take place, and if they did take place, take appropriate action. Are you willing to make those assurances?
So if there's any allegation or any question about a Providence school, we will definitely look into it. That I can assure you.
And let me just read this because I have it in front of me. The teacher grabbed from the hoodie and I'm choking. That seems to me a fairly clear-cut case. And then the other allegation is, and this is not from a student, this is from someone, I think a parent, but I'm not sure. They drag kids by their collars. So those two things, would you consider that those meet the standard of allegations that need to be investigated by the Department of Education?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And finally, will you commit, thank you so much for that, and will you commit to look into the issue raised by the scandal in Connecticut, and particularly the institutionalized cover-up of this scandal, and adopt a policy that will ensure that Rhode Island students are protected at this charter chain and at schools in Rhode Island from physical abuse and institutionalized cover-up of physical abuse?
So I don't have jurisdiction over Connecticut, but I will follow up with Connecticut. But I will assure you that we will look into any allegations that have been made at a Rhode Island school and that does not take place.
I'm asking you to also, in reference to the incident in Connecticut, look into that incident in Connecticut and its institutionalized cover-up. The scandal which was related to that was that the CEOs of the charter chain did not discipline in any way the principal until the video was leaked to the press. What I'm asking is that you form a policy to ensure that Rhode Island students are protected from abuse at this particular school in light of the Connecticut incident. Is that a commitment you are willing to make?
Yes. Yes, I will look into that and I will bring back. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Senator Bell. Thank you, Commissioner. Before we go to Senator Dela Cruz, Superintendent, a follow-up question, well, I guess both for the Commissioner first and then the Superintendent. And I think we're getting close to bringing up Board Chair Nick Hemond. And I ask if you can please, I know it's been a long night for everybody already, but Commissioner and Superintendent, if you can please stay around while the public testimony is on. We're not going to answer questions. It's for public testimony to be provided, but at least you can hear what's being provided. But so, Commissioner and Superintendent, the same question for both of you. Prior to the incident, had anyone in PPSD provided any or shared any concern about the individual prior to what happened in Warwick? So he was hired in May, and the incident happened this May. So within the 1-year time frame, the Commissioner, did anyone in the Providence Public School Department share a concern of, we know about this happened in Florida, we're concerned here?
No, nothing has been shared with me.
Okay.
Absolutely not.
Superintendent?
No.
Okay. So no Providence Public School teachers, staff, parents, or whatever.
You mean like we saw it on Twitter when it first came out, like last June?
Yes.
Is that what you, maybe I misunderstood?
Correct. So yeah, so let me, Superintendent, thank you for helping me clarify.